marine toxicologist and the founder and director of the Marine Environmental Research
Institute. Anyone out there?
She's been
I have no idea who's there.
The effects of toxic chemicals on human and marine life for more than 30 years. And Fabian Stowe, the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, he's an oceanographic explorer who's been raising awareness of the threats to our ocean's health through his films, books, and other projects. And I'm very pleased to welcome them both to our show today. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Susan, in May 2010, you dove into the oil slick in the Gulf of Mexico that had been caused by the Deepwater Horizon explosion. What were you able to see once you were in the water that you couldn't see on a boat at the shore?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Most people think that I went down there and as scientists and just plopped into the water. Actually, we went out about 40 miles from near where the rig had exploded. It was a month after. There was heavy oil in the water, and it looked like it's something like brown pudding. And then sprays come on top of that.
Is she talking about poop?
No, she said brown pudding.
Oh.
The oil in the water. But she's like, it's brown pudding.
So how deep does this thing go? You call it a web of death. Is it murky down for quite a while?
Well, Peggy and I were just talking about that. I did not have a hazmat suit. So I was completely covered, but it was actually pretty dangerous to go in. We did not dive very deeply and got out very quickly, I would say, because I saw what I was seeing is the oil, as you go down water column, is breaking into tiny pieces. And as those pieces are broken up, they're releasing hydrocarbons. So at the surface level, it's a heavy smell of solvent. As you're going down, there's more and more hydrocarbon in the water. And coming from my perspective, I know what that means. These are cancer-causing chemicals.
And you clenched your chest, because were you afraid of getting sick?
I was very afraid. And as I actually, coming up, I was diving with a colleague, and we both got fiery sore throats and headaches that lasted about 3 days. And honestly, we were just, this is not nothing compared to the rescue workers who were exposed.
So how long were you in there?
I would say about half an hour.
How did the use of chemical dispersants make the oil spill an even greater threat to marine health?
What dispersants do, they contain solvents, they break up lipid membrane. So the job of the dispersant is to break up the membrane of oil into tiny droplets.
Do you see the email from the circle?
No.
Marine temperature on-site opportunity.
Organs. So
Go to retouch it.
if anything on any person exposed is going to get more oil in the body, but it becomes a carrier in the body.
Well, Fabian, the argument for using the dispersants is that the oil would just sit there, and they didn't want the oil to get into the marshland because then you can't get it out. But what is the alternative?
I think, and Susan would probably know this much better than I, the mix of Erexit or dispersants and crude are 10 times as toxic as just having the crude itself.
But if you just let the crude sit there,
well, sit there and
how long does
it break down at a regular natural pace. In the meantime, of course, you have arguably a thicker mess that you can clean up more easily than trying to scuttle it all and break it into smaller droplets, which accelerates the process and, of course, creates not only anaerobic activity, but on top of which we've got to remember that our skin is the largest organ. And with that in mind, it more readily absorbs all these chemicals that we're talking about, which who knows what the end results are depending on how much exposure you have.
Now, I remember at the time that there were newspaper reports about the possibility of using some kind of bacteria that would break up the hydrocarbons. Are they ever used?
That was another one of the, I call these happy talk items. That was another piece of happy talk, was that the magic microbes would eat up all the soil once it was dispersed. In fact, what the dispersant did is sink the oil. If you remember, the plumes began to be identified, large plumes, miles long and time. And they're moving around, and finally, a lot of this oil was sinking to the bottom. And once the oil got into the deep plumes, the microbes do not function very well in cold, deep water. So that was one of the balances we looked at. There were so many things. First, there were no plumes. That was one of the statements. No plumes.
Well, apparently there's no more oil either.
And the oil is gone.
It's magically gone.
The oil is right.
You know, one of the things that I
Well,
think
by the way, would it float off and disperse into the through the Gulf and into the Atlantic Ocean, or does it pretty much tend to stay where it has been spilled?
you've got to remember, I mean, the Gulf is a big basin. And yes, there are currents that will take some of it away. But as Susan pointed out, a lot of it has sunk to the bottom, and in some cases there are plumes that are still around. When you turbocharge something, such as these happy talk items that Susan was mentioning, you also create this massive use of oxygen, and therefore resulting in anaerobic activity, which kills off many of those bacteria and of course have other repercussions.
So it drops to the bottom, and there's plant and animal life at the bottom. Does it just kill it all?
It killed a great deal of the deep water corals. It's considered a coral graveyard, one of the tragedies. And people who dove in those areas found miles and miles of just completely mucky, dead, black-looking corals where there had been beautiful, colorful corals a year earlier. And I would say,
And even then, it was horrible because being in wetsuits with a full face mask, you could still have the sensation of eyes burning, your skin very irritated, and having shortness of breath. The gas fumes and being exposed to those little droplets. Imagine an animal that lives, that's their realm, that's their backyard.
And they drink that water. Our guests are Fabian Cousteau, grandson of Jacques Cousteau, an oceanographic explorer, and Dr. Susan Shaw, marine toxicologist and founder and director of the Marine Environmental Research Institute. Now, you were, Susan, in the Gulf in 2010.
I've been back many times. I have a project down there called Gulf Ecotox, looking at the patterns of these cancer-causing compounds called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, just hydrocarbons for short, or PAHs. So some of those, many of those are carcinogenic. So we're looking at, we got samples. We were lucky, the scientists, to get in during that high exposure period. We got samples from what's called Ground Zero, which is around Grand Isle, Louisiana, and Barataria Bay. And those areas were heavily oiled and heavily dispersed. So we are studying the changes of those compounds over time to see, is the oil becoming more toxic? Is it breaking down to less toxic compounds? And we don't know the answer to that.
There were predictions that a third of Cuyahoga River, I don't know of any waters that actually burned. Maybe there
Okay,
were some others.
actually, you can.
My guests are Dr. Susan Shaw, marine toxicologist, Fabian Cousteau, an oceanographic explorer, and we are talking about the continuing dangers that our great bodies of water face. And looks like it's probably going to get worse. I suspect that climate change will also have an impact. We'll come back to all of that after we stay with us. Later on in the show, St. Roberts marks the 100th anniversary of Grand Central Terminal with a look back at the city's most beautiful transit hub. Plus, beautiful founding member and bass player for Joy Division takes us beyond the scenes of that band's 3 years together. And Al Gore will be here talking about the 6 factors that he says will shape the future. This is WNYC, WNYC.org, also available as a podcast, and you can find me on Facebook and Twitter.
WNYC receives support from Roundabout Theater Company, presenting Picnic, written by William Inge and directed by Sam Gold, now on Broadway. Tickets and more information at roundabouttheater.org. Penguin Books, publisher of Thinking in the 20th Century, by Tony Judd and Timothy Snyder. Historians and Friends Ernst Judd and Snyder discuss the past century's intellectuals, their ideas, successes, and failures. Now available wherever books are sold. Tuxedo Park School, an independent school specializing in pre-K through grade 9 education. TPS will be hosting an open house for parents and prospective students on February 12th at 9 a.m. More information at tuxedoparkschool.org.
Tomorrow morning, tune in to WNYC and get up to speed on what's ahead. Economics in Washington, the recovery in the Rockaways. These are challenging issues for make it or break it times. You need more than information. You need the nuances behind the news and discussions as diverse as our communities. Be a morning person. It's never too late to start early. WNYC. Never turn it off.
We're back with Joe and Dr. Susan Sharp talking about all of the various things that are happening to our oceans. This can't be a new process. In fact, aren't there natural oil spills in the oceans? Haven't they occurred since the beginning of time?
Absolutely. There's an oil spill every single day. And by that, some of them are very small, some of them are natural. Many of them are man-made. And unless it's near a coast, unless it's near something that is affecting human beings, we never hear of it. The Gulf is just one example. It's one of the most poignant examples that has not only claimed human lives, but also animal lives.
You were here a while back to talk about the Amazon and the threats to the Amazon that we're seeing. What about the oil spill in the Gulf? Does it back up the Mississippi, or does the Mississippi just bring a lot of other terrible stuff?
Well, the Mississippi's flow is obviously such a powerful flow. It actually goes out there. And if you look at the dead zone, from all the chemicals and all the fertilizers and all that just flow down from the middle of the United States into the basin, into that Gulf of Mexico, it grows by about a mile or so in circumference every year. So this should definitely be a wake-up call. But the Gulf of Mexico is one of the richest estuaries in the world, and yet we're treating it like an endless resource in a garbage can.
And it's been a source of food for this country, for Mexico, people in Central America as well.
It's a source of income, a vital income for countless communities.
So how far do the dangers go? If I were in Belize, for example, or if I were in some other part further south, closer to South America, would all of this stuff be affecting the water there as well?
Fish don't have passports. Those imaginary lines that you draw on a map, those don't exist in nature. Take, for example, the tsunami in Japan and all the news that was accumulated from all the debris, I guess we'll call it, that washed up on the west coast of the United States and Canada. I mean, that's just a prime example of how all these things are connected.
And how much is the radiation?
Well, from the studies I've read and the news that we've seen, some of those fish are now just on the west coast of the United States that originated from the other side of the Pacific.
And it's not just these spills and radiations that are affecting the world's oceans. I mean, you spoke about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Have you sailed into it?
Well, there's a garbage patch in every ocean. The Great
Yeah, the worst.
No worries, man. Everything will be alright. Yeah, man. Oh, don't fret me, brother. Sticky man comes soon. Yeah. Wicked coffee, Mr. Jim. Julia, turn the front the other way around.
Hey, Dave, you're from Minnesota, right?
Yes, I. The land of 10,000 lakes. The Gopher State.
So in conclusion, things are pretty dismal.
You know what this room needs? A smile. Who wanna come with I? Coming along with a song.
What? Is that what you're laughing at?
That's just 3 minutes late. Don't get no clown on us today.
Yeah, chill, Winston.
Sir? Respect, boss man.
What's going on?
I don't know. For some reason, owning a VW book makes you Jamaican.
What does Volkswagen have to do with Jamaica? Do they have a lot of them in Jamaica?
Yeah, they have them everywhere. No, the whole point is like you get in and you're so happy. It's like you went like it's like you're suddenly like so chill that you I don't know have a Jamaican accent. But it's a bunch of like white dudes basically. But it's funny because it's like it's authentic. It's not like super racist or anything. They're not like yeah man, you know like they're actually like saying like
Yeah,
it's authentic. It's really authentic.
I guess that's good.
I don't know. She's like, what do you think? Like Alice is asking me about it. If I was offended. Well, she didn't say that, but I'm pretty sure she's asking about it. I love it. It's kind of awesome.